Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Gladiator in this video. Last two videos on the truck, I went ahead and installed 3-inch Rock Krawler springs front and rear. This video is going to be kind of a follow-up on that, as well as making some corrections, things along those lines. I have some parts I need to put in the front that I had some issues with on the front install, and then I go over some torquing, or redoing some torquing of control arms based on some updated information I received. So that being said, going to get the camera turned around and get to work. All right, so first thing I'm going to address is with the rear control arms, and this is both upper and lower control arms in the back. I used a guide that I found online as far as the torque that I was using when I did the video, and I'm going to insert that right here so you can see what I'm talking about. So after I posted the video, I had somebody comment on the video saying that the rear torque specs for both control arms were way too low, and that I needed to up them. So looking at that guide, the front lowers are torqued to 190 foot-pounds, and they're the same size bolts as these rears. So why would it be any different? So I did some looking online, and it seems the recommendation I've seen is that all bolts in the rear, which are all the same size, a 21 millimeter head, 24 millimeter nut, be torqued to 190 foot-pounds across the board. So both sides upper, both sides lower. So I'm gonna go ahead, grab torque wrench, get those all torqued to 190 foot-pounds, and then I will move over to the front and get to work on some of the stuff I have up there. All right, everything has been torqued to 190 foot-pounds, so all set as far as the control arm torques go. Happy with that. Wasn't too bad. I've got a pretty good snap-on torque wrench. Just have to get kind of the right angles on things, and you should be able to get them all if you haven't already. So next on the list are the two part swaps I need to do. So first one, if you watched my front suspension video, and both these are going to be in the front suspension, the Rock Jock shock extension brackets I bought did not work. I was able to return them through Summit Racing where I got them, so happy with that. Thank you, Summit, for taking care of it. I don't know if there was a change. My truck is an early 2020 build. I think it was May of 2020 is the build date. I don't know if maybe they made a change as production went on, because there was also a slight issue in the rear. The Rock Jock instructions say there's supposed to be like that center hole for like the bolt that would go in the bottom. And I didn't have that in my rears. If you watch my video, I had to drill holes. And then also the fronts, their brackets did not line up at all with my brackets. No matter how I tried to get them onto my factory brackets, it didn't work. So what I ended up doing is I bought these from Teraflex. These are a 2-inch extension brackets, nice solid aluminum. I mean, they seem to be very well built. I mean, they've got the torque specs for the different hardware written on or like engraved in them. These are pretty beefy units. They came, it's the 2 for the front, the additional through bolts which you'll need. You obviously don't need the spacer because these go inside and act as the spacer. And then there's also the 2 bottom bolts, which would go through the holes, which I do know I have those in the front. I have different, the Rock Jock one, or the Rough Country spacers that are on there now, but those are 2.5 inch. So I wanted to go with 2-inch based on my lift. And then also, second thing, when I opened these in the front installation video, I looked at them going, oh, I don't have the right end links. And I'll admit, I was in a mad hurry at that point in time. I was late in the day and I didn't want to mess with it. And I didn't have the instructions. I went on after the fact, found instructions online for installing these, and these are correct. So what I need to do is take out the old sway bar links, the Rough Country ones that I put back in there that are too short, measure them, then set these lengthwise based on what my new ride height is, and get them installed. One thing I will note that I saw in the instructions is if you have a newer vehicle, these 2 shims, these would go inside of the sway bar ends, I think it is. You won't need these if you have a newer vehicle, older vehicle, or I'm sorry, you'll need these if you have a newer vehicle. You don't need them if you have an older vehicle. So I don't need these on mine. But this One that's different is going to go, I believe, on the passenger side lower because there's just a different mounting system on the factory axle based on the track bar mount. And then this one, you'll have the same heim joints on the driver's side. These two spacers here are for this joint, which will go into the track bar bracket. So anyway, I'm gonna get to work on the truck and start removing the sway bar links because that's where I wanna start. All right, sway bar end links are out. There is the passenger side, and you're gonna need to reuse your original lower hardware that goes in by the track bar mount, so don't lose that. And then over here, driver's side is out. So next thing I need to do is measure the height of this link, because these links are for a 2.5-inch lift. I am going to what's gonna be basically a 4-inch lift, because these are 3-inch springs with 1-inch spacers on the front. So whatever this length is, I need to add 1.5 inches to it, and that is the length I need my new end links to be. All right, so these are center to center 6.25 inches. So that means new links need to be 7 3/4. And basically when it comes time to install them, and I'll go over it when I do the install, I'll set one for the 7 3/4 nice and tight, get it installed, and then the other side I'll just basically do what I need to do to get it to go through the holes. You know, it might not be exactly 7 3/4 as well. If the thing doesn't sit perfectly level, you don't want to have load on the sway bar or anything like that. So put one in and then just adjust the other to match. But anyway, I'll get into that when the time comes. Before I do that, I need to do the shock extensions. You need to have as much play as possible as far as the suspension goes to drop it down. That's why I wanted to get these links removed first. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab a jack, loosen the bolts up for the current shock extensions, and then I can start lifting the one side, get it in the air, get the current extension removed, get the new one swapped in, and bolting it all back together. All right, and here you can see I've got the old bracket out on the driver's side, just have a jack under the frame, and the wheel turned all the way to the right. So that is out. Basically just had to lift it enough where the bolts would come loose. So you will reuse your factory bolt and nut. Those are the ones that came with that bracket, so they're gonna stay over there. Here is the new bracket. The top bolt is gonna be reusing your originals. That goes to 56 foot-pounds. Bottom bolt, it comes with the kit. This is gonna get torqued to 95 foot-pounds. It's gonna be the bolt through one side, then the washer and the nut on the other side. And then there is a little retainer bolt that uses the factory holes there. And depending on which side, it'll line up with the correct hole on here. And then that gets torqued to 32 foot-pounds. All right, well, here is the nut and bolts that were supplied with this kit from Teraflex, and trying to torque it to the 95 foot-pounds that their instructions say. You can see what happened to the hardware. It is shot. So yeah, just a fair warning, their torque ratings don't match up well with their hardware. So I am going to go ahead and find another bolt to use in the place of this one, because this one obviously was not up to the task. I mean, that's a 10.9 bolt. It should have been, but 95 foot-pounds is what they had on their thing, and I used my snap-on torque wrench, and it felt like it was getting tight, and then there's that old pucker moment where it all of a sudden gets loose, and this is the result. So completely stripped out the nut. So maybe the bolt's up to it, but the nut definitely was not. All right, everything installed and torqued. I just swiped the bolt that was in my old rough country kit. It was the same size, so it worked fine. And I just torqued it to 56, which matches that. I mean, if it's good enough for that, it should be good enough for that. So each of these I just torqued to 56 foot-pounds. And then the bolt in the bottom is again torqued to 32, and that is a 13 millimeter head if you get that Teraflex kit. These are a mix of 18s and 19s. So all right, one side down. I'm gonna grab everything and move over to the passenger side. All right, and here is the passenger side installed. Same thing as the driver's side. Since I ruined the one bolt on the driver's side, I just reused the one that I had. And then factory hardware, both these torqued to 56 and that to 32. So all set there. Now it's gonna be straightening the wheels back out and getting to the tie rod ends. One quick correction, being that the spec for the bottom ones
is 75 for OEM. I went ahead and instead of doing the 56 like I did up here, I did end up going to 75 on the lowers, both sides. So these are the factory spec 75. Teraflex again said 95, but you saw what happened to their bolt when I tried that. So factory spec 75 on the bottoms.
All right, so now it is time to put the end links in. Got the wheels straightened out. And here is the one end link. Like I said, I measured this. It's now at 7 3/4 long center to center, which is what I need to do based on my new lift. So this is the side that goes in the passenger because you have the one open Heim joint that's going to use the factory bolt. So it's going to be the bolt, then the bracket, then this spacer, the joint, this spacer, the bracket, and then this nut. I'll show you once it goes in. So I'm going to put that bottom in first. Again, that's factory hardware. And then up top you have a studded Heim joint. This holder right here, where you'll be able to use a wrench to tighten it, is a 16 mil. The nut is a 19 mil. So I'm gonna go ahead, start getting this installed, and I'll come back once it's in place and walk you through the next steps. All right, and here you can see the passenger side link is in. You can see how I had to stack shims there. I did also have to use a pry bar to open up the opening a little bit because it was compressed from the previous end link. That lower per factory specs is tightened to 60 foot-pounds. And then per the EVO guide, here's the upper installed. That is tightened to 90 foot-pounds. I used a 16 mil wrench on the stay on the inside here, and then a 19 on the nut. I did have to use a drill bit and just open up the hole ever so slightly. I could not get the stud to go through my sway bar. I don't know if it was just because of buildup and corrosion or what, but just a heads up on that. So everything's torqued, and then I just able to tighten down the jam nuts using a 19 mil, and then I have an AN wrench here, an 8AN that fits the actual link itself perfectly, and it keeps from marring up the finish. So driver or passenger side is in. Driver's side, I'm basically just going to put it in and match the holes up because again, you don't want to preload or put any preload on these sway bars. So I'm going to do everything over there. Both of those, since they're just studs, those will get torqued to 90 foot-pounds. All right, and there it is. Driver's side is in. Again, just put it in so it'll fit in the holes. You don't want to have any load on the sway bar. So again, no measurements on this one. It was just adjust it till I got it in and, tighten everything down. I said previously that I was using a 19 mil. These are standard. So that's a 3/4 nut. The 16 mil still works on holding it in place, but I'm sure there's a standard that fits it. And I still used a 19 mil to tighten the jam nuts and whatnot, but just heads up on that. So these are both torqued to 90 foot-pounds, and that is job done. All right, well, that's where I'm going to wrap this one up. Like I said, this was just kind of fixing a few things from all the previous work I had done on it as far as getting the lift kit in. Thing definitely stands a lot taller. Funny, my mailman just dropped off the mail and he looked at it. He's like, man, this looks taller than last time I saw it. You put some springs or something in it? So it's kind of funny to get noticed. One thing I also want to mention that I didn't mention previously is one of my goals was to soften the ride by using these longer progressive rate springs versus the standard Rubicon springs with spacers, because when I put the Bilsteins on, it did firm it up. I can say that it softened it ever so slightly. It is definitely not as harsh as it was, but it still has a pretty firm ride. So not sure if the Bilsteins are going to stay or if I might go to something a little softer. We'll see. Time will tell. So that being said, if you like what you're seeing, you want to follow along, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I do review them. I will reply. I do have a second YouTube channel where I am posting firearm content. If that's something that interests you, please check it out. There's a link in the description below. I also have a Rumble channel where I'm posting the same. If you're on Rumble, I'd appreciate it if you go over to my page and start following me there. Link in the description as well. I do have some merchandise I'm selling. You probably see some of the items below this video. If not, there's a link in the description. Check it out if you're interested. That being said, thank you very much for watching and have a great day.